Good morning and welcome to our 10 minutes at a little bit past 10 today for everyone. And today we're going to talk about some of the most common VAT issues that we see on employee spends. So as we know, looking back at some of the things that we covered yesterday, if you want to be able to reclaim VAT, you must have a VAT receipt or a VAT invoice. So the VAT receipt and VAT invoice must have a UK VAT number on it, not an overseas one, a date of the invoice or receipt, not always there, but sometimes it's missing. You have to add that on yourself. And you need the invoice number and the supplier for most VAT receipts. So if you've got a UK VAT receipt with a UK VAT number or a UK VAT invoice, you can recover these costs when it relates to employee expenses. So we're going to go through them one by one and they get more complicated as we go. So get a cup of coffee and hold your seats because this is going to get interesting. So if you buy a car for your employee, you can't recover the VAT charged, as this is a company car for an employee. You may be charged the VAT, you may be able to see it on your VAT invoice, but you can't recover the VAT against that employee's car. You can, however, recover the VAT if this is a company vehicle used for business trade, say a business van, or say you're a car dealership or you're a taxi driver and you're using your vehicle for the purpose of your business trade. In those instances, you can recover the VAT on that spend, but not if you're providing a company car for an employee. It's not allowed in that circumstance.
Speaking of providing a company car to an employee, if you're leasing a car and, of course, the employee has access to this car for their usual life exercises, I will say. So basically, if they can use it for themselves personally, then all of a sudden the cost on the lease has a VAT restriction. And there is, in fact, a 50% VAT restriction on the least cost element of the actual lease. So if there's any VAT due, remember that you will only be entitled to claim 50% of the charge on the lease. Now, the one thing I will say is actually you can claim 100% of the maintenance costs charged to the lease, but remember 50% of the actual lease cost is disallowed. So any of that VAT gets charged to your P&L as an extra cost. So when you're posting an invoice on Xero, QuickBooks, or whatever system you use, you'll probably find that you have an invoice with 3 line items.
Yeah.
So 50% of the lease cost plus VAT, then 50% of the lease cost, no VAT, and then maintenance costs, service charges, etc., where you can get VAT on those as well.
Yeah. Now, if you then have servicing charges, or you need to buy fuel or oil or tyres or anything like that on that company car, then the VAT is 100% allowable and you can reclaim all of that regardless as to whether or not you have any personal benefit on the car or not. So 100% of all expenses on that car is allowable in your VAT return.
So we're going to move on to entertainment now, which are, I would say, probably one of the more complicated areas of staffing expenses.
Yeah, well, the business entertainment is really, really simple, isn't it? It's just disallowed. Staff entertainment is really complicated because it depends on the circumstances, what the spend is, and the nature of the event.
So as Lisa mentioned, business entertainment is not allowed for VAT.
Yeah.
Now, HMRC are more than happy to tax you on any income you generate from taking your clients on those meetings and making a sale, but they are not happy for you to recover the VAT on any entertainment involved. It's one of their clauses. I think it stops businesses spending all of their profits on entertaining their clients.
Yeah, and just
towards the end of the
basically
year.
going out for a jolly.
Yeah, so I think that's what that protection is in for. So business entertainment is not allowed for VAT.
Now, traditional staff entertainment, your Christmas party and the summer barbecue, you can claim 100% of the VAT on the employee cost of those expenses, the Christmas party or the summer barbecue. But you can't claim the VAT of the employee's guests, partners, children, Aunt Mary, whoever comes along as a guest. It's kind of treated as if it's business entertainment, even though they're not clients or suppliers. It's a bit odd, but it's not allowed. And don't forget the taxable benefit in kind on the employee cost if the cost per head, including VAT, exceeds £150 per year. So those costs you should be posting to the employee entertainment 100% recoverable account code in your accounts. Now, the reason we're going to have different account codes for the different types of employee spends is because some of them are allowable with a benefit in kind element, and some of them are allowable with no benefit in kind. And then if it's disallowable for corporation tax and it's disallowable for VAT, pop it into the business entertainment. And what that will help you do at year end is identify what costs, or help your accountant identify what costs should be included and what costs should be excluded from your tax returns.
That can make a really big difference. Saves the admin towards the end of the year. Now, staff gifts, you may have staff members who you give Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, wedding gifts, anything along those lines. Now, these are arbitrary gifts and they are not performance related. If they're not performance related, you can claim 100% of the VAT on the spend because they're considered as trivial benefits. So in these cases, you can post them to the gifts account code. The one thing I will say on Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, wedding gifts, etc., from a PAYE perspective, if you're doing cash or cash equivalent vouchers, there will be a PAYE element which is required on those items.
So staff gifts that are long service or performance rewards, these are performance related. So because they're performance related, not arbitrary and generally expected when somebody reaches a certain goal or milestone in employment, if they're under £50, you can reclaim the VAT. But if they're over £50, then you have to account for the output VAT on the purchase. So you have to account for the input VAT plus the output VAT, which basically has a negative VAT impact. It's another HMRC oddity, a little bit like the reverse charge. So any codes that you give to, or any costs that you give to employees or actually, there's probably just employees or directors or clients, put to the gifts code so that then you can then analyse them at the end of the year and work out whether they should or should not have a corporation tax implication.
Following on from birthdays before, if you take your staff members for a meal, it's fully allowable so long as they're what we class as ad hoc. So as long as you're not every single year saying we are always going to take you to a specific place or a specific time of year. So basically, as long as it's almost impulsive, it's not set in stone. Then,
so long as it's not excessive.
And as long as it's not excessive, it's fully allowable for VAT. But it is not allowed if you're a business where there's only directors involved with the birthday celebration. So you need to have a staff member there who is not a director. Otherwise, it is not allowable for VAT.
Yeah.
If it is allowable for VAT and you have a staff member there, it falls under the trivial benefits rules. And you can post this to the employee entertainment 100% recoverable code, because 100% of this cost is going to be recoverable for VAT. And it keeps things nice and simple.
Yeah. Now, if you're having a staff meal, which is a reward for performance, so perhaps you're taking somebody out at the end of a quarter, you're going to give them a bonus in the form of a meal, then that is service related, but it's an employee entertainment cost. So it's allowable for VAT unless they're a director, in which case it's not allowable for VAT. It falls under the benefit in kind rules, and it is taxable as a benefit in kind. So because it's expected, it almost becomes part of their pay. Therefore, the employee needs to be taxed on it. So you post that one to a staff welfare code, and at the end of the year, you review your staff welfare and see which have benefit in kind implications and which don't.
Now, what about for staff meals where you provide food and drink during, say, a conference or a training course? Now, this is fully allowable so long as there is a business purpose for the training.
Yeah.
So I must emphasize there has to be a genuine business purpose for the training. If this is the case, nice and easy one here, you can post this to employee entertainment, 100% recoverable, because this is, of course, allowable for VAT.
But if this is a working lunch and you take your staff to the pub for a working lunch, then that's slightly different. It's fully allowable for VAT if the meeting has a genuine business purpose, but it falls under the benefit in kind rules and is taxable as a benefit for the employee because they are working in return for their lunch. So it's a form of pay for the employee. So that's something that you need to think about. So those ones we would post to the staff welfare cost code, again, so that we can review at year end and see whether there's a benefit in kind implication. Now, what you should do for anything that you post to any kind of subsistence or meal or gift or anything that you give to an employee that is outside of PAYE, you should always record exactly what the purpose of that meeting's for, and that then makes it a lot easier at the end of the year for you to decide whether or not there is a PAYE element on it, whether there's benefit in kind element on it, that it's been treated correctly for VAT and for corporation tax.
So what about staff events? Now, we have a couple of elements to staff events. So firstly is if you're entertaining your staff. So you might have cost of taking staff to the physical event. So you take them to a football match, theatre, anything like that. That is in fact fully allowable for VAT. But I must emphasise it is not allowed if there are only directors involved in the entertainment. So basically, if you're a directors only business and you have no employees, you won't be able to claim for these on a VAT basis. But as long as you have one employee with you, you're allowed to claim for the VAT. Now, because this is staff entertainment, this does fall under the benefit in kind rules, and it is a taxable benefit for the employee. But what we're going to do with these ones is because they're 100% recoverable for VAT, we can post these to the employee entertainment 100% recoverable code.
And then at the end of the year, you see if it falls under the £150 annual allowance.
Essentially, with all of these, you have to go back at the end of the year and just check.
Yeah, just have to reset.
Make sure at the end of the tax year that you're allocating the relevant expenses for the staff members to a P11D.
Yeah. And finally, what about the costs of staff events, but they're business related? So if you're meeting the cost of sending staff to a networking or training event and you're sending your staff member away from the business rather than feeding them on the premises, then this is again slightly different. So this is fully allowable for VAT if the meeting has a genuine business purpose, and this is considered to be a subsistence cost. So it's feeding the employee when they're sent away from the office. So fully allowable for VAT, not a benefit in kind, and allowable for corporation tax. So thank you for joining us today for our not quite 10 minutes at 10 o'clock. If you're a member of the BBB club, then please log into come and see us in the group. That's great. And if you're not a member of the club, then please join us today. We'd love to have you there. We'll see you soon.
Bye. Whereas my hand always disappears off screen.
Does it?
I wave